boys and girls. It is Friday again, and I have another book that I would like to share with us for this weekend. It is titled On Duck Pond. It was written by Jane Yolen, and the reason why I chose this particular book is if you think back to at the very beginning of the year, we were working on writing personal narratives. Well, this book, On Duck Pond, is an example of this boy's story. Something that happened to him, and he retold it in his own words. Now, the author, Jane Yolen, you may remember, wrote for us a book titled Owl Moon. We read Owl Moon back in the winter when we were starting working on our information writing. We read Owl Moon to compare a narrative to our information book, Owls. So, a couple reasons why I chose this book. I am going to go ahead and start reading. I'm going to pause after each page so you can take a closer look at the illustrations. But I really want you to listen to the author's words and how Jane Yolen tells the story of this boy's morning. So this is On Duck Pond. Jane Yolen is the author, and Bob Marstall is the illustrator. As I walked by the old duck pond, its stillness as the morning dawned. Was shattered by a raucous call, a quack of ducks, both large and small. Raucous call. Take a look at the illustrations that go with that word. Raucous call. What are you thinking that word means? Down they splashed, the water spattered, then they chittered, whistled, chattered. So if I go back to the very beginning, the author describes the stillness of the morning on Duck Pond. Take a look at some of the animals that the illustrator included to show the stillness. And then right away, as the morning continues, it is shattered by a raucous call. Look at those ducks, and look what they've done to disturb the pond. It says they chittered, whistled, chattered. Try to imagine what that might be, what that may look like and sound like if you were at this particular pond when this occurred. Trout and turtles turned and scattered. A frog leaped off his lily pad, quite surprised and very mad. A heron flew back to her nest. Tadpoles hid, which they do best. Old Duck Pond, once still and quiet, now seemed battered by the riot. Pay attention to some of the vocabulary that the author is using here to really describe for us what he or she is seeing, because we don't know yet if it's a boy or a girl telling his or her story. Ducks and reeds and sky and grass all trembled in the water's glass. And my reflection too looked strange. Every part of me was changed. I looked like I'd been rearranged. So now here in this part of the book, we do see that it is a boy telling the story. It looked like he was out in the morning walking his dog and came across this still pond that had been very disturbed by these ducks arriving. But soon the raft of ducks moved on, and soon all signs of riot gone. So it certainly didn't last very long. And then the pond grew mirrored still. So now the ducks have left. Let's see what happens with the pond now that that riot has left. Wild things returned, as wild things will. Notice some of the animals you see returning. The heron left her nest and limb. Turtle soon found new routes to swim. Trout returned to quiet pools, their fingerlings in careful schools. Tadpoles troubled by the splash now marked new water roads to dash. Can you see the tadpoles swimming beneath the water? The frog swam back to his old pad. Forgotten was the scare he had. The pond now still, reflections grew, doubling creatures, old and new. So that's the second time that the narrator mentioned reflections. I know when I look in a mirror, I can see my reflection. What do you think the boy means by seeing his reflection here out in the pond? Listen again. The pond now stilled, reflections grew, doubling creatures, old and new. You figured out where he's seeing his reflection. An understanding quickly dawned. We shared a shock and now a bond. And I was feeling very fond of everyone on Old Duck Pond as I walked home. That is the end of the personal narrative, but the author did end with some nonfiction facts here. So let's take a look at let's read just this top part here. It says raft is one name for a group of ducks. They are also called a paddling of ducks, a badlinge, a very old English word for ducks on land, pronounced badling, and rhyming with paddling. Bunch, brace, gang, or team. I have to admit, I made up quack of ducks that I used in Old Duck Pond. Most people simply call them a flock, but aren't those other names much more fun? Also, a baby duck is a duckling, and a group of them is called a brood. So that was a little bit of information that Jane Yolen gave to us about the different terms she gave for the group of ducks. Okay, there's one more part here I want to pay attention to, titled Explore a Pond Habitat. So this boy had been out walking his dog early in the morning, and he came across this old duck pond. Maybe it's a place he visited every day, so he might have been familiar with some of the animals there. When he first arrived, the pond was very still, and he took some time and really observed what was around him in and around the pond. But then as that flock of ducks arrived, all that stillness was disrupted. And yes, the ducks left as quickly as they had arrived. And he then again noticed how everybody returned after the ducks had left. So here it says, explore a pond habitat. Ponds can be magical places, alive with birds, other animals, and plants. The pond in this book is like one you might find near where author Jane Yolen and illustrator Bar Mostel live in Massachusetts. Is there a pond near where you live? What kind of animals can you find near your pond? Some birds might stay at your pond all year, while others might stop over on journeys that are hundreds or thousands of miles long. What changes do you notice at different times of the year? So, it being spring, it's a really fun time to go out and observe nature around you. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be at a pond, but if you have one nearby, you might want to check that out. It is when everything that is, begins to grow. The plants, the trees, new animals are born, like she mentioned the tadpoles. Those tadpoles had just been hatched, and they will eventually go through metamorphosis and turn into frogs. But seeing some of those new signs of life is really interesting, and that's exactly what this boy did. So what I'd like for you to do is try to write a personal narrative. Now, it doesn't have to be about a visit to a pond like this boy did, but really take a moment and maybe write a story about your last walk you took outside, or maybe even just riding your bike. If you didn't really spend time noticing the things around you, go ahead and give that a try. Sometimes you just ride to the end of the block, stop, and look around. And don't just look at eye level, look up and look down too, and see what you notice. If that's not something that you're able to do, then just go ahead and write me a few sentences or draw what you think the boy meant by seeing the reflection. He didn't have a mirror with him. What would his reflection have been? All right, boys and girls. So that is On Duck Pond. I hope you enjoyed the story and the illustrations. I thought it was a really good representation of this boy's story. Have a good weekend. I'll see you all soon.